Whoa, buddy. Put that thing back in its holster. We haven't gone anywhere.
I don't understand.
Check out the MichaelDukesShow.com for information on how to get access to the podcast.
Welcome to the party, pal.
The Michael Dukes Show.
The greed and the entitlement is astounding to me.
What more could you want from a low-budget radio program?
This is a dumpster fire.
That was just BS.
It is time to get a new perspective.
We know just what you need, and we've got just the cure. Open wide and prepare for a steaming hot cup of freedom.
I just don't fathom it.
The Michael Dukes Show, streaming live across the world.
Live around the world on the internet at MichaelDukesShow.com and across the great state of Alaska on this, your favorite radio station and or FM translator. Hello, my friends. Hello to Monday. Ooh, man, what a day, huh? What a beautiful, beautiful, rainy, wet day it is down here on the... it's raining like cats and dogs, as opposed to this weekend, which was just absolutely gorgeous. I'm almost glad that it's not quite this nice every weekend down here in Homer, because I'd like to keep it for ourselves. It's beautiful. I hope you had a great Mother's Day. What a good time. We celebrated Terry as a mother here. We went down and had just a beautiful morning, little coffee, little fresh donuts from BB's Bakery. And then later on, we went down and ended up having a Mother's Day, I guess we'll call it a brunch, down at Captain Patty's. on the spit. So right there on the spit, sun was out, beating down, beautiful sunshine, delicious seafood, and it was just what a fantastic meal, just absolutely fantastic meal at Captain Patty's. And then we came back, and she got a chance to hang out, drink more coffee, watch some good old shows that she's been wanting to watch, that she has absolute control on Mother's Day, and just had a great time. Absolutely great time yesterday. It was absolutely fantastic, and it was beautiful. It was a huge, beautiful day. It was great. It's great. So I hope you moms out there had a had a similar experience, because it was yesterday was your day, and for all the crap that moms get to put up with, that one day a year where they get celebrated is the least we could do, right? The least we could do on that. I even called my mom and told her Happy Mother's Day. I mean, try to be a good son, but I don't always succeed. So anyway, she was it was good stuff. All right. What's on the agenda for today? Well, we've got so there's a lot of headlines here, but some of them you can't. I mean, I don't even know what to say. We're going to go over a lot of the headlines here in hour one, and I guarantee you it's going to be entertaining. If it's going to be entertaining. Let's just put it that way. And then in hour two, we're going to be joined by David Boyle, who is education advocate. He writes for Must Read Alaska, does a lot of stuff here in the state in regards to education. And I asked him to come on the program to talk about a article that Shelley Hughes had put out here. Excuse me, just I guess now it's been 3 weeks ago now, that she put out on her blog. Shelley has a blog. I didn't know this. Interesting piece talking about the Anchorage School District. We discussed this last week. That the Anchorage School District had put out some different budget numbers. They received $49 million from the legislature last year. And the question was, what did they do with that money? Because one of the school board members put out a document that was distributed to the legislature that said they used only about $8 million of that money for operations this year, even though they're crying poor mouth, right? And then tuck the rest of it away for, I guess this year. I don't know. They're only using $8 million of it. But then, according to the superintendent, all of the $49 million had been applied to the current year operating budget. And then there was a third dissemination that they filed with deed. This is the thing that they have to file with deed, that said that ASD did not apply any of the $49 million to this year's budget. So which is it? You used $8 million, you used it all, or you used none? This is a question, especially, I think this is a pertinent question, especially since ASD has been the most vocal of all the school districts in the state when it comes to when it comes to the whining about the inability to fund their schools. They were, $90 million deficit, $100 million deficit, whatever it is. It's huge. And then of course using the sleight of hand with, well, we're eliminating teacher positions, never telling you that 250 of those, 250 to 300 of those school positions are covered by basically either the spots were empty or people were going to resign anyway. But they acted as if they were going to have to cut 400 teachers, right? That was what they said. We're going to cut 380 to 400 teaching positions if we don't get our money. And it turned out that at least a bunch of them had already been covered by empty positions and more. So it's just kind of the same game. So we're going to talk with David Boyle about this. He said he's definitely been on top of this, and we're going to discuss that with him in hour 2 this morning on the program to take a look at that. All right. So then, so I guess we'll just get into it. I guess we'll just get into some of the stories and see what this is all about. Yeah, it's scare tactics. Rick in the chat room just said it's scare tactics. That's all it is. It's exactly what it is. It's the same kind of numbers game, and it's gamesmanship, right? It's playing around with the truth. Well, sure, we're going to cut 400 positions. They didn't tell you that 200 of them were already empty, and another 250 of them they were already planning on getting resignations from, et cetera, et cetera. I mean, it's the same kind of stuff we see all the time in government, where they are basically playing games with the wording to try and frame it in the truth that they want you to understand. And that is well, irritating to say the least. All right, so what were some of the big headlines from this weekend? Well, first and foremost, I guess we should start off with this, that defined benefits proposal is going to be hitting the floor of the House apparently today, and it is expected to pass from the House today. Now, this is a little shocking because my understanding was that this was probably not going to make it through this year because of all the uncertainty of finances and everything else. And the governor obviously is not a fan of this either, which I think that's good for me. I'd be okay if the governor just wanted to veto it. According to the rosiest projections, the most optimistic assumptions from the Reason Foundation, this new defined benefits program would cost about $2 billion over the next 30 years. But wait, there's more. You may think $2 billion over 30 years, that's not too bad. But remember, that was based on their assumptions of getting a return of 7.25%. That would be the highest in the nation, pretty much, return. Since 2001, the pension funds have averaged only a 5.8% return. So, past performance indicative of future results. They're saying that they can get 7.25%. Under the current pensions, they're only getting 5.8% over the last 23 years. If you could whatever you were doing there, why don't you do it here? Get an extra 2.5%? If the state adjusted its assumption to a conservative view of 6.5%, which again is still higher than the 20-plus year track record, it would add $2 billion to the current unfunded liabilities. Now, remember, we're still already on the hook for $7.5 billion of pensions for the plan that closed nearly 20 years ago. We're still paying. It was $13 billion when we got to it. We're down to 7.6 billion. So, but to hear them tell it, oh, this is going to save us money. Don't worry, this is going to save us money. And of course, nobody's bothered to really ask what the workers want. No, see, they asked the unions what the unions wanted, and that's how we ended up with this bill. Because if you look at what workers and what studies, have said across the nation, is that workers want portability. They want the ability to move in and out. They're not looking for, necessarily the golden shackles which is what essentially this bill would be. You have to be there they want to be able to move around and bop about and do stuff like that. I mean, something like the average millennial changes their job something like 12 or 13 times in their life, which is, again, unheard of for most of us who are Gen X or older. We were expecting to basically get into one position, hold 3 or 4 positions, and then finally get to that one job or career and stick with it. But that's not what the new generation wants. They hadn't even talked about that. But the total cost on this thing could balloon to $11 or $12 billion. $11 or $12 billion, which is another, $300-400 million a year over 30 years. I mean, on top of everything else. We're going to add another $250 million, $300 million every year for this, when it was something that they didn't really want in the first place. And you want to know the craziest part? Modeling from the Reason Foundation shows that HB 78 may not benefit most employees. Over 90% of new hires would receive lower retirement benefits under the defined benefit system due to its backloaded nature. Most public workers do not stay long enough to vest in the more generous later years benefit typical of defined benefits. In contrast, the current defined contribution plan provides better retirement value and portability for short and midterm employees. 90% would receive lower benefits. But see, they didn't ask the workers. Who they asked was the unions. The unions are the ones driving the bus on this deal. They're the ones that are like, oh, we need that. Oh, we need the high cotton days are here again. So it's coming up for a vote today in the House. Now, this is going to be an interesting vote. I'll be interested to see who votes for what, but it's expected to pass, of course, with the Democratic-led majority. It's expected to pass. Chuck Kopp's definitely going to vote for it because he's, don't want to see. Yeah, Kathy Giesel will vote for it as well, plus all the Democrats. So let's just hope that the governor has got his big, bright red veto pen out, because I think that's the only way you're going to slow this kind of madness down. I mean, by the way, we're already $1 billion underwater for next year, but no big deal. We'll just add to it. No big deal. All right, we got to go. The Michael Duke Show. Common sense, liberty-based, free thinking radio.
If you missed the show, you can listen to it on your time with Dukes On Demand. Oh, and it's free. Like America used to be. Streaming live every weekday morning on Facebook Live and MichaelDukesShow.com.
That's why these poor, ignorant workers need the wisdom and benevolence of the Juneau Clown Posse. Exactly. That's exactly it. I'm sorry. I'm looking through the comments here. Kevin says there's a reason that we're contemplating a tier 5. It's because the legislature has no business being involved in a retirement program. Do state workers really want the legislature to be in control of their retirement? A 401 direct contribution would be much better, more manageable, portable, and transferable. And no one is asking employers such as the boroughs, villages, cities, or school districts if they can afford it. We found several problems that had at least 2 handwritten amendments on Saturday to this allegedly well-crafted, rock-solid bill. Yeah. I mean, this is the thing. This is the thing. Oof. Let's see. I'm scrolling backwards here. I hold the remote. Wait a second. Chris says, I hold the remote, but my husband tells me what we're going to watch. What? I mean, come on. Brian says, no man hath greater love than he who gives his wife control of the remote. I do that a lot. Made it sound like yesterday I finally relinquished control of the... No, I mean, she gets... it's what she wanted to watch. So yeah, it was her day yesterday. She was in charge. Okay. Scrolling down. More, says Terry. Yes, more. What? Not having the money is the goal of the spending? This is Fat Ring? I don't know. Chris says it's not about generations wanting something. The shape of the economy has changed since dinosaurs roamed the earth. I mean, no, but I mean, it's what I was saying is if you ask them this is what the studies are showing. But the argument from the politicians is this is why we're having such an employee problem. That's why I brought that up, Chris, because that's what they're acting like. Oh, this is the reason why. And I'm just not buying it based on everything that we're seeing out there in the world. And that's why Brian was saying these poor ignorant workers need the wisdom of the legislature. It'll be great. The government can take charge of the retirement funds, and once the dividend is gone, oh look, these billions of dollars just lying there. Well, that's the thing, they can't, because that's the one that's controlled by the that's the one that's controlled by the legislature. I mean, that's the one that's controlled by the Constitution, right? I mean, they're on the hook. They're on the hook for this stuff. Regardless of which way, that's the thing. They can't not pay it. It's essentially a contract. Willie says, make all municipal governments pay up what they owe before they can participate. No municipality will go for defined benefits if that was a requirement. Yeah. It's crazy. Yeah, Ron says the unions will benefit from the defined benefits because many employees will walk away from their jobs before they ever earn enough time to get their retirement. Kind of like Social Security. You pay in your whole working life and then die at age 60 and never receive a dollar. And Kevin pulled up the statistic and said 18% of workers who qualify for defined benefits will be here in 30 years. So that means 82% won't be here. So maybe there's something to that. I mean, the whole thing is just kind of crazy when we're looking at, I mean, of all the things we need, adding more money to the books, even in the rosiest assumptions, is we shouldn't be adding anything at this point. And hopefully the governor's going to stand behind that, and we won't have to deal with that again. That's my hope anyway.
Public enema number one. Oh, wait, sorry. Public enemy number one, which makes more sense. On the other hand, he's a little bit of a pain in the Michael Duke Show.
Yep, that's me. Just your royal pain in the Michael Duke Show. Good morning, my friends. Welcome back to the program. We are continuing here talking about all the stuff that Kevin McCabe just threw out some numbers. It was interesting to see that, we were talking about the differences in different types of employees and what people really want. Again, I don't think that they've asked anybody who's actually working what they want, because the portability aspect is important. One of the numbers that they came up with is that 18% of the workers who will qualify for the new defined benefits plan today will be here in 30 years, meaning only 18% will be remaining. 82% will have left before they vested, which means they'll have put a bunch of money into the system and they won't benefit from it. 82%. That's That's not a good wish on the long. I guess if you're the union and you're you're running and you're putting it all together, you're getting your money, so that's all that matters. But it's not really for the employees. That's a big part of the problem. And another thing he brought up is that there's no one is asking the municipalities, the boroughs, the villages, the cities, school districts if they can afford their part of it. Because this is not just a free ride, folks. The municipalities are on the hook for it. Remember, we still owe $7.5 billion from a plan that ended 18 years ago, 19 years ago. And when I left the borough in Fairbanks, that was in 2014, we were still paying every year. We were paying back pay for the borough's kick on that defined benefit. Do you think they can afford more? Because that's what they're asking for. More. All right. So what else took place over the weekend? Well, first and foremost, the governor signed a hiring freeze, travel restrictions, and more. It's like all of a sudden they discovered that, my goodness, this is going to be, we're like, he's the first to think of this. And is it too little, too late? We have no choice, he says. And he freezes the out-of-state travel and the hiring freeze and the new regulations. And all I can think of is, why didn't you do this earlier? We're nearly at the end. We are 10 days away from the end of the session. And now you put, I hate to gripe about this. I really, I feel like I've beat up on the governor quite a bit this year. But come on, man. You just now? Now I've discovered that this is I've just discovered that this is not a big surprise, Governor. His own 10-year. Are you reading the stuff you're putting out? His own 10-year forecast has predicted this again and again and again. For the last 5 years, his 10-year forecast has been predicting this. So first he puts out the hiring freeze and the regulatory stoppage and the travel ban, which is, again, I don't even know. It just seems like more than anything, it seems like it's posturing more than anything else. Because we're not talking about a significant amount of money. Good for him. It will save some, but how much? I just don't even know. At this point. But it'll be minuscule in the face of a $200 million, $300 million deficit, which is probably what we'll end up with when it's all said and done this year, if you include supplementals and everything else. Next year projected to be over $1 billion. But that was step one. Step two, the governor sent a letter to the legislature. And that letter basically is imploring the legislature to create a fiscal policy working group. It's essentially what it is. Okay? That's what he is. Under the authority granted to me by Article 3, Section 18 of the Constitution, I'm submitting this message to the legislature concerning the fiscal future of the state of Alaska, said the governor. Several tax proposals have been introduced during this legislative session. While I too share the concern about how we will fund government in the future, a tax and spend approach will not yield a sustainable long-term fiscal solution. As I have consistently stated since my first term, a truly durable fiscal plan must include revenues, but it also requires clear guardrails, spending limits, statutory and regulatory reviews, and policies that make Alaska the most competitive state in the nation for investment and new business growth. Do you really think this legislature cares about new business growth or competitiveness in the private sector? Really? He goes on to say, equally important is the need to evaluate all current state spending and government functions, not only for efficiency, but for their relevance and long-term impact. Any serious effort to stabilize Alaska's fiscal future must also focus on diversifying our economy and creating new industries, which in turn broadens the economic base for potential revenue. Well, only if we had some form of taxation, I guess, that actually affected the private sector in that way. But, I see where you're going with it. He continues, as such, I cannot support standalone tax measures. I'm issuing this message to reaffirm my long-standing position as governor. The legislature and the executive branch must establish a joint team to develop a comprehensive, sustainable, long-term fiscal plan that ensures stability and fosters economic growth. We have an opportunity post-session to form this team and begin identifying, researching, and drafting legislation around the core components of such a fiscal plan to underpin Alaska's future. By transmittal of this message, I'm formally requesting legislative leadership join me in convening a joint team to begin this process. Which, again, this all seems like, haven't we been here before? Haven't we been here before? Again, there were some key standouts on this, by the way. Some key things, some key words that I don't know if you heard while I read it, but one of the key things is that he said he opposed, quote unquote, standalone tax measures, which is very interesting because this is one of the things that Ben Carpenter was talking about. Ben Carpenter, he got creamed on the political trail running for the Senate because he had stood for having taxes as part of an overall fiscal plan. He was never a fan of a standalone tax measure, but he got creamed for even kind of phrasing it like that. And here's the governor. He opposed standalone tax measures. He talks about spending limits and statutory and regulatory reviews and other policies. And then, of course, you get into the response. Senate President Gary Stevens of Kodiak said Dunleavy's proposal had not yet been discussed by the caucus, but that he said it was a reasonable idea. However, he was sorry to hear Dunleavy oppose tax bills being considered by lawmakers this year. Mia Costello, the House Minority Leader, said that prior efforts to forge long-term fiscal plans have failed because, quote, not everybody likes the various proposals being offered. Nobody is going to like any of these proposals. Are you kidding me? Why? Because we all been living large on the gravy train. Because everybody's been sucking off the teat of government. Everybody's getting the different program. Of course, not everybody's going to like this. The Fiscal Policy Working Group didn't like this, but they voted for it because they understood it was what had to happen. Because not everybody likes the various proposals being on. And that's the thing. It has to be all the various proposals. Everybody's got to feel a little pain. And then Bryce Edgmond. God love Bryce Edgmond. Bryce Edgmond declined to comment on Dunleavy's opposition to revenue-raising bills. He said of Dunleavy's plan for a joint fiscal team, he said, quote, we could have used it a long time ago, unquote. What? What? You had it. You had it in your hand. And you were part of the problem in pulling it down and pulling it apart and not allowing it to get to the floor. When Ben Carpenter was there. Because that's what he was trying to do the entire time. He was trying to get this stuff to the floor. And Bryce Edgmond was part of the cadre that didn't, we could have used it a long time ago. You had it. In 2021, a bipartisan bicameral working group crafted a framework intended to make the state's finances sustainable for the long term. The policies were pitched as a package that could attract support across the political spectrum, but none have been approved by the legislature. Do you really think this is going to make any difference? I mean, we've got a perfectly good plan. We already have one. We have a perfectly good plan with what the fiscal policy working group made. Is this just more, we're going to study the study of the study that we already studied? Is that what this is going to be? We're going to create a post session after May. We're going to come in and we're going to put it all together and take a month to study it all and then come out with what? The same thing that's already failed? And it's not failed because the plan was bad. Costello said it. Not everybody likes the proposals. Oh, that's too sad. It's too sad that not everybody likes the proposals. I mean, I'm not saying that she's to blame for that. I'm just saying she's pointing out the obvious. Of course, everybody's ox is going to get gored in this thing. That's what the fiscal policy working group talked about that. None of us like this, but we've all voted for it. Senator Mike Shower says we got to do something. He says the state's got to act soon. But again, he said he was opposed to simply studying the fiscal problem. We study and study and study and never do anything. And I think that's a frustration for everybody, probably in this building, including Governor Down. He says, I'm tired of studying and not acting. You know, that's the thing. He was part of that working group. He welcomed the governor's request to attempt to craft a bipartisan solution. But again, you already have a solution in front of you. The framework was already laid out. The framework was already there. All you had to do was take it and use it. And Ben Carpenter tried and tried and tried and tried to get something out of the thing. And what did he get for his trouble? He got branded as a guy that wanted to have taxes. That's what he did. He got tarred and feathered with even though the tax was just part of the whole overall plan, and he said he wouldn't support it. He wouldn't support it unless it was part of an overarching plan. He still got killed. I mean, this is just too little, too late, man. Too little, too late. We already have. What's going to happen? You think they're going to stick around down there in May and create this fiscal policy, 2.0 fiscal policy working group 2.0? I mean, this is crazy. What are they going to find different that they did? Again, the answers are going to be the same. The answers are, this is going to hurt. I mean, damn, I should have invested some money in the Alaska Study Institute. We could have made some money from studying the study of the study that they studied before the study. Right? The answer is there. But it's all unpalatable because they don't want to be the one. They don't want to be the one that has to tell the junkies that the next fix is not coming. Is that too harsh? Is that too harsh? But they just don't want to be the bad guy in that case. All right. We got to go. The Michael Duke Show, common sense, liberty-based, free-thinking radio. Back with more in just a moment. Don't go anywhere. Right after this.
Running on 100% pure beard power. Oh, also some coffee. We dip our beard in coffee.
Ha, nice beard.
The Michael Duke Show.
I mean, guys. I mean, the plan, there is a plan already. And the sooner we could have done this, the better it would have been. If we had enacted the 2021 plan in 2022, we could have avoided a big chunk of this mess that's coming on now. But we didn't. In fact, it was stonewalled at every opportunity. They delay, deny, delay, deny, delay. I mean, this is what they do. Think of if we'd had a fiscal plan 15 years ago. I mean, this is madness. I just don't even know what to do. And Henry, please do your job. What am I not doing my job on? Oh, I'm not talking about your talking points on global warfare and immigration and everything else. No, Henry, I'm not. I'm not going to talk about that. And if you don't like it, it's okay. You don't have to like it. That's just how it works. Yeah, this is just, it's painful. Jeffrey said, I'm close to retirement. I wonder if I can get a job with the Alaska Study Institute. Jeffrey, I'm sure you could probably make that happen. It would probably be very, very lucrative. Very lucrative. Rick said, I'm beating a dead horse. Terry says, to a bloody pulp. I know. Doesn't it feel that way? It just feels like it's Groundhog Day, right? It's Groundhog Day. This is the same thing we've been yeah. John says, today is my birthday. Happy birthday, John. Happy birthday. He's 36 again. No, is it 36? He looks to be about 36. Congratulations, John. Happy birthday. You can always count on Dunleavy to be a day late and $1 short. Yeah. Oh, dude. I hate that movie, says on. I said Groundhog's Day. I hate that movie. So frustrating. It's so entertaining. So entertaining, though, isn't it? Just, man. Where is the money for defined benefits coming from? Maybe the PFD. It will be the PFD. There won't be any PFD left. I mean, they'll be lucky if they don't. I mean, even if they don't pass the defined benefits, we'll be lucky if the PFD lasts another year. I mean, let alone adding defined benefits to the program. I mean, we'll be lucky if it gets another year at this point. Okay. I just don't even, I really like Mike Dunleavy. I really like him as a person. And I just think that but the problem is there's just been so many missteps on this, like, hiring freeze now, 10 days before the end of session. How is that going to help us going into this I mean, hiring freeze and a travel ban. I just don't even know. Don't even know at this point. Oh. All right. What else are we going to talk about? We're going to talk about this U.S. News and World Report ranking. This is the one that they talked about in the presser last week. Remember that? Oh, we're gonna go through that. That should be fun. Why is the government taking so long to veto? Why is the governor taking so long to veto some of the stuff? That's a good question. He's already said he's not going to, he's already said he's going to veto it if he doesn't get the two other things that he wanted. You think they're going to open it back up? They've already transmitted it to him. I don't understand why he's posturing in that way. I mean, yeah. Rob says we still haven't solved the three-sided problem, taxes, spending, and PFD. Every side assumes the other two should compromise to solve it, so we go nowhere. Exactly. That's exactly it. Nobody wants to feel the pain. Everybody thinks the other person should give and that they should not. That's the problem.
The Michael Duke Show. Seriously humorous with a pinch of intellect. Sorry. That is humorous. Here's Michael Dukes.
This whole thing, Rob Myers has just summed it up nicely. We still haven't solved the three-sided problem. Taxes, spending, the PFD. Every side assumes the other two should compromise to solve it, so we go nowhere. This goes back to Mia Costello's comment about how, nobody wants it because they don't like part of it. They want to, not everybody likes the various proposals. Well, no, of course not. Isn't that the hallmark of compromise? That everybody gives a little and walks away not completely satisfied? Isn't that the hallmark of a good compromise, when everybody's a little dissatisfied? You've got this three-sided problem: taxes, spending, and the PFD. And it's, the only one that's been feeling the heat over the last few years has been the PFD side. And now they're finally getting around to but the spending, everybody wants somebody else to pay. Everybody wants somebody else to be on the hook for it. So you got the pro PFD side. They've taken it into the shorts for years. The pro tax side, they're just starting to come into their own now, talking about these different tax structures. And now the pro spending side, who hasn't had to give an inch in 15 years, 20 years, 30 years, now they're feeling it. I mean, but this is where we are. We go nowhere because everybody wants to avoid the pain. But the pain is coming. You can get sick from the cure or you can die from the disease. What do you want? Well, all these people are like, well, I don't have to deal with it. It's like, I don't have to deal with it. Dying relative doesn't matter to me, because I won't have to be the one feeling the pain. I mean, we could fix it, but I don't have to be the one that, so, whatever. That's the thing. Everybody's going to feel a little pinch. Yeah. The state is the great fiction, Brian says, which means you can continually assume that you can continue to live by basically living off of other people. That's the great fiction of the state. where everybody, don't tax the man behind the tree, right? That's what it's always, as long as somebody else is paying for it, it's all good. It's nutty. And now he wants to create a new fiscal policy working group. Yeah. This was brought up last week during the Senate majority press conference. And I went out and looked for it to find it because I was like, oh, I want to see this. And this is the U.S. News and World Report annual survey. It's the best state survey. Like, what is the best state in the union to live? And Alaska has never done real well in this. In fact, if you go back and look at it, 2017 through today, we've never done better than 43 out of 50 states. And this year, ooh, baby, right there, 49th out of 50 states. Only ahead of Louisiana. They began the survey back in 2017, and two categories that are consistently low scoring are the economy and crime. Because, well, why? Well, because our economy has been in the crapper since 2017. I mean, that was the recession, right? I mean, that was Bill Walker and everything else. Our economy has been in the crapper since then. We tried to come out of a recession. We were just starting to claw our way out of a bit of a recession. And then COVID hit, and it's never truly recovered. And then, of course, crime is, oof. Utah has held on to its top ranking for the last 3 years. They are the top number one state to live in the last 3 years. Top 5 states: Utah, New Hampshire, Idaho, Minnesota, and Nebraska. Bottom 5 states were Louisiana, Alaska, Mississippi, New Mexico, and West Virginia. And, of course, this is the question that Mark Sabatini from the Juneau Empire asked of the Senate, what are your thoughts on this? And that was their comment of, well, we're doing pretty good. I think Southeast Alaska is the best place to live. And, we're still here, but we could leave at any time, I suppose, said Senate President Gary Stevens, with his retirement home in Hawaii waiting for him to finish up the session. Right? I mean, there are just some crazy things going on. The makeup of the survey shows the economy being the categories for the survey: the economy, education, crime and corrections, fiscal stability, healthcare, infrastructure, natural environment, and opportunity. Well, we've always scored pretty high on, you'd think on natural environment, but no, we didn't. We scored 39th out of 50 on natural environment. I don't know what that means. But the economy being at 45 out of 50, education being 49 out of 50, even though we spend almost more than anybody else in the nation. Fiscal stability, we're 44th out of 50. Crime and corrections were 46th out of 50, which of course is a hallmark of rampant crime like that is a hallmark of poor fiscal outlooks for many people. I mean, yeah. It is crazy that this is where we are, but we are now officially, not that 49th out of the best states We're 49th out of 50, which is ironically where we've hung out in our educational stuff for years. Our educational achievements have been in the lowest 49th percentile. Now we're what, 51 out of 53 or something? But don't worry about it. It'll all work out. They just need a little bit more money. If they have just a little bit more money, they can make it better for you. That's what it's all about. Don't worry about it. Okay. David Boyle is coming up next. He's going to join us. We're going to talk about what the real story is behind the money at the Anchorage School District. What's happened with the money we've already given them? Shouldn't this be a bigger question? Shouldn't the legislature be asking this question? Back with more. Hour 2 dead ahead right after this. Oh. I mean, wow. Rep Becky Schwanke says the pro spending side isn't feeling anything. They brought nearly $333 billion in new spending this year. That's the hang up. Spend less, then we need to look at the revenue side. Yeah, I mean, that would be ideal, right? I mean, look, Becky, we've been saying this on the program for 25 years, that we have a spending problem, not a revenue problem. We've really never had a revenue problem. This all boils down to a spending problem. But, I mean, we've been talking about this for years. And now, all of a sudden, it's just, they don't want to feel the pain. They don't want to feel the pinch. That's what's going on. Chris says the problem is not three-sided. It's simply spending too high. There's not enough people in Alaska to justify the spending levels. Taxing not enough people will never create enough revenue. Per person, roughly what we're spending, 14, 15. It'll be fine. Don't worry about it. This could go on forever. Audrey says, bless her heart. She says, the legislature should have to listen to a session of yours like this one today. Your talking points make so much sense. Yeah, I've been saying the same thing for 25 years, Audrey. 25 years I've been saying the same thing. And that whole time, the same group of numbskulls has been in the legislature in the leadership positions. I mean, Lyman Hoffman's been there for 40 years. Gary Stevens been there for 25 years. Bert Stebman's been there for 20 plus years. Bryce Edgman's been there for, I mean, you could just go down the list. These people have been there. I've been the same thing over and over. But they're like, trust me, it'll work out. You won't feel a thing. Bohica. Right? If you don't know what Bohica is, I'll let you Google that and look it up. The KPBSD is coming in hot after closing Nikolaevsk. They're going to close 2 more schools that I feel they are blindsided. It's going to get ugly, and lots of schools are going to get closed down. The reason they don't have great teachers is because they don't know how to budget to keep good teachers. After showing up, I wouldn't want to work for them either. Lisa has gotten activated. Yeah, she's seeing it. She's seeing what we've been talking about. State spending. Oh, thank you, Rob. I have updated numbers. State spending per person in 2023 was $21,000 per person. Second only to Washington, D.C. Thank you, Dave. Thank you, Rob. Appreciate it. Thank you. Lord love a duck. All right. Let's go test out the connection with David. Are you with me, David? Oh yeah. See, I see nothing. I see nothing. Yeah, they can't. They just. I mean, seriously, right?
Yes.
They just
I'm
can't
ready.
see or hear anything.
Yeah. I'm just thanking God this morning I don't live in Louisiana.
Yeah, exactly. Because it couldn't get much worse than this. Oh, wait, you could live in Louisiana. I guess that would be it.
It's interesting because it's also a petroleum-based state.
Well, that is true, but not the vast majority of their resources don't come from petroleum, though, right? So it's interesting, but it's interesting to say the least. All right, David, I'm going to put you back in the green room. We're going to be back to you here in just a second. We're getting ready to close things up, so I'll pull David back into the green room here, and we'll see what it goes. $21,000 per person in 2023. So if it's you, your spouse, your two kids, don't worry. It's only $84,000. Did you get $84,000 worth of services last year? I mean, hell, if it was you and your wife and you're retired, it's just the two of you, or you and your husband and you're retired. I mean, that's only $42,000. Did you get $42,000 worth of services last year? And that, of course, doesn't count the taxes that are being spent by your boroughs or your cities on top of it all. Oof. All right. You know what? I just can't. I just can't. I'm just going to keep on. All right. We're about to join David Boyle, writer for Must Read, education advocate, and more. The Michael Duke Show, Common Sense Radio.
Whoa, buddy. Put that thing back in its holster. We haven't gone anywhere.
I don't understand.
Check out the MichaelDukesShow.com for information on how to get access to the podcast.
Welcome to the party, pal.
The Michael Dukes Show.
The greed and the entitlement is astounding to me.
What more could you want from a low-budget radio program?
This is a dumpster fire.
That was just BS.
It is time to get a new perspective.
We know just what you need, and we've got just the cure. Open wide and prepare for a steaming hot cup of freedom.
I just don't fathom it.
The Michael Dukes Show, streaming live across the world.
Live around the world on the internet at michaeldukeshow.com and across the state of Alaska on this yo favorite radio station and or FM translator. Good morning, my friends. Welcome back to the program. Thanks for coming in and joining us. It is hour 2 of the big radio show, and we are ready to go for hour 2. Joining us this hour is David Boyle, who writes for Must Read Alaska and some other outlets. He is a education advocate, and it has been covering these stories and looking into this and digging into the details of this stuff for many years. He joins us this morning to discuss the latest of what's going on in the Anchorage School District, which Shelley Hughes brought up in her blog here this last week. or I guess about 10 days ago. And he's going to give us some rundowns on this as we talk about it this morning. Good morning, David. How are you?
Hey, good morning, Michael. I'm doing pretty well for an older person. How about you?
Not too bad for an older person. I feel pretty good. It's Monday. So David, this story kind of caught me out of the blue. I know that there's been a lot of misleading stuff that the Anchorage School District has been putting out since this battle has really formed over the BSA. They started last year, right? Flat funding. We heard about that loss of funding. We heard it was, they were losing money, all this kind of stuff. But you actually dug into a few different things. One, you talked about the fund balance, that they had a huge amount of money in their fund balance at one point while they were still crying poor mouth. They talk about how they're going to have to eliminate 400 teaching positions. What they didn't tell you is that 200 of those were already unfilled. And then they had another 250 resignations, and they were expecting almost another 100 more and all this kind of stuff. So while in truth they were eliminating positions, they were positions that essentially were already empty or going to be empty. And so it was just it's more deceit, right? It's lies through omission. It's telling the big lie with the truth. But they spin it up in fear. And now Shelley Hughes was pointing out that from that big chunk of money that they got last year, $680 per student, it was a one-time payment outside of the funding formula, where they received $49 million from that one-time bonus payment, essentially over-the-top payment. Then we have three different accountings for how the money was spent. One of the school board members put stuff out to the legislature that said they spent $8 million of it. The superintendent said, oh, no, we spent all of it. And yet the stuff that they filed with deed said they didn't spend any of it. And so I want to dig into this a little bit. Give us your overview. I know you've been looking into this. Give us your take on what's going on here.
Well, Michael, you pretty well summarized what's going on. There were three different stories going on. Of course, you've got Shelley Hughes saying they didn't spend any of it in this current, the $49 million. They didn't spend any of it in this current school year. Then you've got school board member Kelly Lessons, who's probably the smartest one on the board, saying that we actually spent $8 million of the $49 million in this school year. And then, amazingly, you have the superintendent sending out two different stories. He responds to Shelley Hughes's letter. Actually, you can find his response on the school district's webpage, asdk12.org. And he says, we're actually going to spend the $49 million in fiscal year 26, the next school year. It's not really a rebuttal of Representative or Senator Hughes's statement that she made. And at the end of the last school year, June 30th, there's the annual comprehensive financial report. Right. It's an audited report that every government agency is supposed to do.
Right.
And at the end of that, June 30th of last year, they had over $121 million in their fund balance.
Right.
And the question is, where did all that money go between now and then?
Well, I guess my question, and I'm sorry to interrupt, I want you to get back to the CAFR because I think it's important, but my question is, his rebuttal to her was, well, we're going to spend it in the next school year. He had put out something earlier that said they'd already spent it. So what is it? Is it we already spent it, or we're going to spend it next? I mean, which is the true story here, David? That's the problem.
Here's another letter that Superintendent Bryant of the school district sent to the legislature. A 3-page letter explaining their fund balances. In reality, the $49 million is fully incorporated into our fiscal year 25 operating budget. That's the last page. You go to the second page of that same letter, $49 million is programmed into the district's fiscal year 26 budget to offset next year's projected shortfall. Now, the $49 million for this year and the $49 million for the next budget year, that can't be a coincidence, I don't think.
Spending it twice? I mean, how is that? I mean, it seems like the left hand does not know what the right hand is doing at this point, right? I mean, it's like, what is really happening? Where's the money? Which again leads us back to the CAFR that you were just talking about with the audit report. And now they have $120 million plus in their fund balance. They say they've got what? They have $108 million shortfall. It would seem like a big lion's share of that is taken care of, is it not?
Yeah, lion's shares, a lot of it's taken care of, but by what you also mentioned, vacancies in hiring. Board President Andy Holloman said the other day that in March that, I think it was March or January, that, we have 200 teacher vacancies and 195 of them will go away. So we're not going to, let's say, fire any teachers per se. And watching the school board work session last Tuesday is very interesting, and they expect another 250 resignations after this year. So they're not going to have to let any people go. The other interesting part of this story is what they call them? Relocations.
Right.
And what a relocation is you're a teacher in school building A. All of a sudden, because of reduced funding, or they're going to close that school A, you have to move to school B. And it's just horrendous emotionally for the teachers. And I'm thinking, where did you get these people? I'm sorry. I think most teachers can move from school building A to school building B. Because guess what? Students move all the time. When they move from elementary school to middle school to high school, and they don't seem to have a problem, and they become a lot more flexible when that occurs.
Yeah.
So it was hilarious listening to that. It went on for about 20 minutes of the hour school board work session meeting. But I've been going through the budget stuff, and it is confusing to me. I don't know where the money is and where the money's going. But Michael, here's the worst part. You ready for this? Not next school year, fiscal year 26, fiscal year 27, the school district expects $74.5 million budget deficit. $74.5 million. So guess what they're going to be doing the next session, as we all know.
Oh yeah. No. They said it. They said it originally when it was one of the comments that I quoted from, I think it was the ADN, where after the HB 57 passed, and they said, oh, well, this is good, but it's not nearly what we need. Again, alluding back to that $1,800 BSA increase. Basically saying we'll be back next year for more.
Right. Now, they have come up in that last work session last week for the budget for next school year, fiscal year 26. The district has come up with some reductions, and one of those is they're going to reduce the number of teachers by little over 69 full-time equivalents, and that's because enrollment has declined. Now that'll save about $9 million, and they're going to reduce the number of principals by 3. They're still going to keep 5 more. So by the reductions that they're going to have that next year, they're going to save a little over $14 million. But what's really they're going to save a lot of money this year, but they're going to spend a lot of money for next year, even though fiscal year 27 looks even bleaker for the school districts. They're going to keep 5 principals that they had originally going to FTEs that they were going to originally reduce. So they're digging a hole. They're not very good at backfilling the hole. And to me, it just displays a complete lack of good leadership on the school district's part and the board. They don't want to make the tough decisions. Now,
David,
what I have, go ahead.
I was just going to say, I want to go back to the fund balance, to their fund balance there, 120. Now I know they have to have, by statute, they're supposed to retain some of that, right, for cash flow and emergencies. but it's a smaller chunk, right? Isn't it? Is it only 27 million? Isn't that what they're supposed? What's the number that they're supposed to retain versus what they have in the account right now?
Well, they have to retain about $27 million, and that's because the muni requires it to maintain a good bond rating. You don't want it to go below their reserve funds to go below a certain level, and that means keeping a minimum of $27 million to keep your good bond rating for the municipality of Anchorage. And the state requires you to keep a minimum of 5% in your fund balance. Now, last year, at the end of that June last year, when they had $121 million in their fund balance, that was 18% of their general operating fund. And the statute reads you're not supposed to keep any more than 10%. So they were well above that. And they have some investments that they make pretty good money on compared to what we're doing today, I guess, with our PFDs.
Right.
So they have to maintain a certain amount, maintain bond rating with the municipality. And they also should maintain, the board says they should maintain 8%, but the state says you have to maintain a minimum of 5% of your general operating fund.
So the 5% of the general operating fund, what does that translate to in that $120 million that they have languishing in that account? How much would they have the availability to spend per statute if that's the case?
Well, 5% of their general operating fund would be about $30 million.
So they'd have $90 million roughly that they could use to spend on whatever problem that they've got going on, and yet they continue to say we've got $100 million deficit.
Well, they're going to spend 37 million of that 121 million this current year.
Okay,
to offset their budget deficit. But when you add it all, and then the 49 million that they have left over in that unreserved fund balance that they can use for anything, that's going to be pushed to next fiscal year and used to fill the budget hole in 26. Okay. So you've got 121 million total. You take 37 million that's going to be spent in operating the school district this year. You got 27 million that's locked away in the bond debt reserve fund that they need to maintain. And then you take the other 49 million that they're going to use. They still have it in the fund, but they're not using it this year. They're going to use it for next year to offset their big budget deficit. You add those numbers together and they say you have you only have $6 to $8 million left. Well, I've done the math and it adds up. You got $14 million left. I know when it comes to big numbers, it's just loose change, but it's still considerable difference. And that kind of indicates to me that they're pretty loose with their arithmetic as well.
Well, again, just because all they want to do is then come back and say we need more. That's what it comes down to. All right, hold the line for a second. David Boyle is our guest, senior contributor for Must Read Alaska, our education analyst. We're going to continue this discussion in just a moment. Don't go anywhere. The Michael Duke Show, common sense, liberty-based, free-thinking radio. We'll return with more right after this.
Listened to by more staffers in Juneau than any other show because their bosses told them to. And after what they just heard, oh man, they're going to be pissed.
You're a bad, bad man.
The Michael Duke Show.
Okay, David Boyle is our guest, continuing on our discussion on education. I mean, this really, to the outsider looking in, especially when you get three different stories on a big chunk of money, it really just, it seems to me to be questionable that these folks can be trusted with even more money, David. I mean, that seems to be the answer. Trust us. We don't really know what happened to this last chunk of money, and we can't seem to make up our minds or get our story straight, but we just need another, We just need another 50, 60, 80, $100 million more to make it work. And it just becomes so ridiculous that that's where they're at in asking for this when they can't even account for what they have right now.
Right. Now, if you go to the Department of Education and Early Development, you will find, as of October 31st of last year, the fund balances for every school district. And I can send that to you, that link to you if you'd like, Michael. In Anchorage, the unassigned fund balance, it's another number, but this is, the first one was as of June 30th last year, the audited report. This one is as of October 31st last year, 4 months difference. It shows Anchorage with over $50 million in unassigned fund balance. In other words, $50 million that they can use. So wherever you look, you'll find a different number. For the Kenai, for example, Fairbanks is in actually deficit. Kenai, it shows that they have over $11 million of money that they can spend in their unassigned fund balance. Fairbanks, they have a deficit. They have over $31 million in the red in their fund balance. I don't know how they got there, because they've been very, very good at closing schools, reallocating funds, etc. But we're all hampered in the fact that we're tied to some of these collective bargaining agreements in
Right.
Anchorage. And I think I've mentioned before, the teachers union, they're currently negotiating that contract with the district. Teachers union going in position was a 15% salary increase. And they want the district to pay $25,000 a year for every union member for their health insurance. The health insurance portion, that just has to stop. It's got to be more economical, as you know, to go with the state's Alaska Cares plan. And you go to Fairbanks again. You look at the salaries. Salaries are one thing, but you have to look at the total package, salaries plus benefits. And what the budget folks in Fairbanks use for calculating the total cost of an employee, the loaded cost is salary plus another 41% for teachers for their benefit package. So you take, let's say their salary is $100,000 for fund, it's easy. Add another $41,000 to that for their total package. That's just for the teachers. For the other collective bargaining agencies, you add a 61% increase for benefits. That's way out of whack. Now, if I'm a young teacher or a young employee, I'd rather see the money in my pocket, my salary, versus going to maybe health insurance that I probably don't need when I'm younger, hopefully. But when I'm older, the problem is there's no flexibility in these contracts. One size fits all, just like education. And
And David was pointing out the fund balances, and David was because Harold says the fund balances are required by state law. You can't go below a percentage of your total entitlement, and that's what David was saying. There's a portion of that that's locked in, but the available was $50 million out of what was available, not the total fund balance, what was available and unencumbered. So again, this idea that somehow all these money, we need even more, even though we've got money sitting in the bank and we're not accounting for that. That's part of the problem that we're dealing with today. David Boyle is our guest. We're going to continue with him here. The Michael Duke Show, common sense, liberty-based, free-thinking radio. Like, share, subscribe, ring the bell, do all that stuff. Let's get to it. Here we go. No, I mean, I was a little early. Here we go now.
The Michael Duke Show. Not your daddy. Wait, sorry. Not your daddy? Ooh, not your daddy's talk radio. Whew. I was scared for a second. Thought we were going down. Here's Michael Dukes and the show.
Okay. Continuing now, David Boyle is our guest. And we are continuing discussions about the school district, specifically the Anchorage School District, because, David, we kind of know, as goes the as goes the Anchorage, so goes the rest of the state. It seems like in a lot of ways, right?
Yes, yes, that's correct.
And
Yeah.
they have been the most vocal. Also, in my opinion, the most deceptive of all the school districts when it comes to the numbers and what they're talking about and everything else, and whether we're talking about eliminating teacher positions or whether or not that's really people or if it's just numbers on a spreadsheet, and everything else. The cutting of gifted and talented programs and music and sports, when those are the most painful things to cut, versus, like you said, overhead and some of the other things they could be looking at. But when you look at this, Anchorage has got a real history of kind of deceiving and inveigling the public and riling the public up and using them as a stalking horse to try and get the legislature to essentially give them more money.
Well, that's what bureaucracies do. That's one of the most important things they do besides continuing to grow. I've never seen until Doge came along, I've really never seen a bureaucracy diminish in size. But when the military has cuts, and having been in the Air Force for 20 years, what they do is they want actually the spouses to complain. So what they'll do is they'll cut benefits, they'll cut the daycare center, they'll cut the hours, they'll cut the number of children that can be accommodated in the base daycare center. And then people will start complaining to their congressman, writing letters. They put the pressure on, just like the Great Alaska Schools Group does with the state legislature. And we have, if you ever read the documents and the testimony, people testifying, a lot of them are actually school district employees, and it's all the same templated letters, boilerplate letter. And very few of the testimony on those people that support an increase in K-12 funding has factual information in it. It's all about, oh, I love my children love the school. They love their teacher. They're so happy. And nobody ever said, very few will ever say how much it cost. Very few will ever say that my child really learned how to read because of the Alaska Reads Act. It's amazing. And I think what they do is they just count the number of pros, those people opposed to the bill and those people that support the bill. And they go with that and use that as the excuse. And you have to look at the composition of the legislature. I mean, we have Jesse Borkman down from the Kenai. He's an actual teacher in the Kenai School District on leave. So he's voting for pay raises for himself. We have Representative Elise Galvin in the House. She was one of the founders of, quote, the Great Alaska Schools, which I called the funding arm of the NEA, because they were joined at the hip with them. I actually have a picture of them at the NEA headquarters in Anchorage, coordinating with them early on, several years ago when they first formed the Great Alaska Schools. I call it the Great Alaska School Budgets anymore, but we don't. And it's hard to, just like on this show, it's really hard to explain without boring people and unless you have a PowerPoint where you can actually show the numbers there and you can say, this is this, this is this, this is this, and it's very hard to get people to actually take those numbers and testify as well. A lot of them will testify that you're using my PFD to subsidize or fund K-12 education, and that's true. And just like you and Brad have been saying, PFD is going away. If you want to keep your PFD, you have to reduce some of the stuff on the other side of the ledger. You have to reduce the spending in the state's budget. And there are only there's three. There's K-12 education. We can become more efficient. We can have more school choice, for example. And the other one is Medicaid, particularly Medicaid expansion, where Medicaid pays single able-bodied people that are below a certain poverty level. I think it's 138% of the federal poverty level in Alaska. They also qualify for Medicaid. And the third one is University of Alaska. I think there's a lot of overhead there, and it probably could be reduced and become much more economical.
You talked about the policies and some of the policies that could help. And that was one of the big battles this year, was that the governor said, I agree that there needs to be an increase in funding, but I want these policies. The same thing that a lot of the minority said, even though they later on waffled and rolled over and voted for it anyway. The problem is they don't want those policies put. Why the hesitation? Why the pushback on policies that could affect and help Alaska students? I mean, we're talking about the charter schools, the open enrollment, some of these other things that the governor has asked for that they have either partially put in or totally ignored. Why the pushback on the policy? They basically are like a kid stamping their foot saying, I want my money now. I want my $2. Give it to me. Boom. No strings attached. Why the hesitation on policy?
Well, I think it's pretty well known that the cause of that is the fact that the union, the teachers union, and the other government unions in the various school districts, they control the messaging and they control the decision making. I mean, this is a monopoly, and it's just like AT&T back in, I think it was 1981, that when that federal court system went on for years, and it was initially by the Carter Phone Company opposed AT&T because they wanted to connect their phone equipment to the AT&T lines. AT&T said, no, you have to use our telephone. So it's very similar to that. And monopolies do not like competition. It reduces their power and their control. And in this case, it would reduce maybe the number of employees that a school district has and actually save money. So Governor Dunleavy's bill, HB 204, had basically, you were not required to go to the zip code school that you lived in. You could go to any public school in the state virtually.
Which wasn't
in Anchorage.
Which wasn't new, right? It wasn't new. I mean, that's already been happening. He was trying to codify what was already going on because that's been happening. And all of a sudden people act like the sky is falling, like this is going to create huge. This is already happening. This just codified it, right?
Correct. Now, if you live outside the Anchorage school district, let's say you live in the Valley and you drive into Anchorage for your job and you want your child to go to school in a particular school in the Anchorage school district, you have to pay a tuition because you're out of district. And I don't know about the other school districts. That might be the same way, but it's not a large amount of tuition, but I don't know why you have to pay a tuition if you're out of district, if you live in the state. The other one was, and the big deal was charter school authorizations. In other words, authorizers. An authorizer is an organization, a nonprofit, the state, the department, or whatever, that could begin a charter school. And in this case, Governor Dunleavy wants the State Board of Education to be able to authorize or start charter schools. Now, that's more competition for the school districts. And there is one problem there in a little bit, in that, let's say the State Board of Education authorizes a charter school. That charter school would have to be operated by the district in which it's physically located. That may not be the best idea, but hey, it's competition. People want charter schools. And the Anchorage School District forever, way back in the days of Superintendent Carol Como back in the early 2000s, they philosophically are against charter schools. It doesn't fit their template. And guess what? The kids are doing the best in our charter schools. And I love our ABC schools like Northern Lights ABC and Birchwood's ABC. Northern Lights ABC, you can't get into that school. I mean, a lot of their teachers probably send their kids to that school because it's back to basics. They use phonics. They use Saxon math, which most of us listening used when we went to school, a good foundational math. And the other value they use is patriotism. How can you have that in the Anchorage School District? Oh my God. But so those are the two big things, which shouldn't be controversial at all. I see Alaska as becoming probably the second, if not the last state, it'd be the second only to Hawaii, to actually have some type of real good school choice, like an education savings account. Now, you probably know that Texas, Governor Abbott just signed a big school choice bill in Texas last week. you get $10,000 for your student, and you can send your child to any school you want. Alabama is the same. A little lower money cost because it is cheaper here. You get $7,000 to send your child to any school you want. Private, public, parochial, whatever, or homeschool. And, the parents are responsible for their child's education. When you give them the responsibility, you also have to give them the authority to implement that responsibility. It's going to be a tough road to hoe up here in Alaska. I wish I was pushing school choice, way back in 2008, and it was tough working with the legislature and at that time Senator Dunleavy.
Right. No, I mean, this is a huge problem, and other states are picking it up. Rob Myers just mentioned that New Hampshire just approved ESAs. I know that it was Arizona. I think Arizona has an ESA program. There's several states now that have come to this point of essentially backpack funding is what it's the colloquial term for it. And yeah, we should be pushing more towards this. But yeah, the union hates that idea because it takes the power out of their hands and it reduces the number of students that they have in their system, which means less money in the brick and mortar school system that they have so lovingly, tended and cultivated over the years. And that's where we're sitting right now.
Another thing
go ahead.
HB 204, the governor's bill, had in it was equalizing funding for correspondence or homeschool students. As you know, right now, a homeschool student is only worth 9/10 of what a brick and mortar school student is worth. And the governor wanted to make that parity, or let's call it equity with a capital E. And then he also wanted, I believe, to put special ed or special needs and the CTE, the career technical education factor, in for homeschool students as well. I don't know why that was such a big problem with the education industry or the NEA. That doesn't make sense to me. But right. Because the schools would have gotten more money, like the Anchorage School District has a correspondence program. They would have gotten a little more money for their correspondence students as well. Once again, I think it's because it doesn't fit the mold of a brick and mortar neighborhood school. And it's a philosophical argument, I believe, not as well as a funding argument.
David Boyle is our guest. We're going to continue here in just a moment. Don't go anywhere. The Michael Duke Show continues. When we get back, we're going to talk about some of the other things that were talked about in the legislature, including a specific bill that would only affect Anchorage in regards to pupil-teacher ratios. We'll be back with more. The Michael Duke Show. Common sense, liberty-based, free-thinking radio.
Running on 100% pure beard power. Oh, also some coffee. We dip our beard in coffee.
Ha, nice beard.
The Michael Duke Show.
Okay, we are in the break right now. David stepped away for a second, apparently to take a phone call. So let me go back here and say anything. Harold and I agree on this all the time. He said, all the policies will not improve anything. You're still simply sending money to each month to 54 cost centers with zero mandate to focus state entitlements inside the classroom. This is something we've been talking about for a long time. It's one of the reasons why we've been such advocates for not bolstering the formula, because the formula doesn't guarantee that money is going to is not going to get into the system, right? David? I mean, there's no guarantee. That went out the window in the 90s, right? Or it was started in the 90s, went out the window in the teens, where they're like, no, it used to be that they had to have a certain percentage go to the classroom, and now it can just go almost anywhere.
Right, and it was, I think it was 80% or it was 70%, I think, had to go to the classroom. But there were so many of the smaller school districts in the rural areas that may not have been possible because of their infrastructure problems and issues. But but it surely should have been possible in the Big Five school districts. And Anchorage, I think, said they had like 79% going to the actually the classroom. Yep, they've done away with that ceiling and that requirement, so the funding can be used pretty much for almost anything. And what I'd like to see it for, and let's even like intensive needs. I don't think the intensive needs students actually are beneficiaries of all that 13 times the BSA funding that they get from the legislature. I think it just goes into the school district's general fund. And there's been a tremendous increase in the intensive needs students in the Anchorage School District because they're worth about $78,000 each. So they see that as, huge dollar signs on those students, unfortunately.
Yeah.
Special needs is 1.2 times the BSA. So, they've got a big increase in the number of special needs students. Some students are worth a lot more than others, unfortunately, and there's no equity in that regard.
Well,
But,
even making the correspondence and the homeschoolers equal as far as a 1-to-1 versus 90%, that still doesn't account for all the other parts of the formula. I mean, for a brick and mortar school, they get multiples of, in fact, wasn't it upwards of, the current when the BSA was at $5,500 or $5,600, wasn't the Anchorage School District getting something like $7,700 per student or something by the time it was all said and done?
I think it was like $7,800 plus per student total. Not total, each student coming once it was run through the formula. So Anchorage would start out with like 42,000 students plugged into the foundation formula. And when it goes through all the factors and it's like compound interest for the most part and compounded, it comes out to like 76,000 students on the other end. And that's what they get funded for, 76,000 students times the BSA. That includes intensive needs, CTE, special needs, school size. There's one they ought to do away with, school size. I think the formula needs to be redone, but I'm afraid if it's redone, it'll be redone to benefit the education industry versus benefiting the students.
Yeah. Well, because we only got 2 minutes here, but that's part of the problem. We look at the results. They keep saying we need more money, we need more money, we need more money, yet they continue to be in the bottom of the achievement category. This can't just be a money issue. During 2015, we had the highest per student spend in the country, and yet we came out at 46th or 47th in 2015. This is not about money.
Yeah, and what I've seen by Senator Lukey Tobin, who's the big pusher for the funding of K-12 education in the Senate, she's questioning now the National Assessment of Educational Progress results, the NAEP test. She's not sure we should really be participating in that. And we all know why, because it shows us second from the bottom, only above New Mexico in fourth grade reading. I don't know what's going on with New Mexico, but pretty bad. But so what do? You change the test. So I think you remember in Alaska, we started out with the Iowa test of basic skills. I actually took that. I'm from Iowa originally when I was in school. And then they went to, they said, we're not doing very well in that one compared to the other states. So let's go to the California achievement test. And they could be compared, Alaska could be compared to California. And Alaska didn't do very well on that one. So let's change the measurement again.
Right. Well, let's just stop taking the test. We just, we'll just stop testing because, we don't want to see how badly we're doing. That's where we're at right now. All right. Hold the line, David. We're about to rejoin the Michael Duke Show. Common sense, liberty-based, free thinking radio. Let's do it.
Public enema number one. Oh, wait, sorry. Public enemy number one, which makes more sense. On the other hand, he's a little bit of a pain in the Michael Duke Show.
All right. We're back. David Boyle, our guest, senior contributor for Must Read Alaska, education advocate here in the state of Alaska. We've been talking about what's going on with the school boards and the school districts and all the budgeting and everything else. And then we saw this bill from Zach Fields, which talked about pupil-teacher ratios. And unfortunately, this classroom size bill was only targeted at Anchorage. You would think that if it was good for the goose, it would be good for the gander. But this is a very narrow bill, talking about putting students in and only having a certain point, and then paying teachers more, and et cetera, et cetera. But it only affected Anchorage. But then I look at some of the numbers that you've pulled out of their actual reporting for the numbers in Anchorage School District and others, that shows that it's not as bad as they say it is. And my question is, what's the story on the student teacher ratio, the pupil teacher ratio? What is the, what is this real story here on this, and why was he pushing for that specifically in Anchorage?
Well, as you know, he represents downtown Anchorage and the north side of Anchorage, which is very low income for the most part. I don't know why. Well, it's because he's owned by the Anchorage School District. Let's just call a spade a spade. And it doesn't make any sense why it just relates to Anchorage, where you have to restrict the student teacher ratio to a certain number. It actually depends on, is the teacher really effective in the classroom? Can the teacher teach the kids how to read? Can the teacher motivate the students? But the State Department of Education has actually put out a list of all the schools and the student teacher ratio. And in Anchorage, the average for all the schools is 17.95 students per teacher. That's, some of the school, it's in the teens. It's very seldom is it over the teens, like 19. And that's only when it becomes like a high school. Of course, the charter school different, that has a correspondence like Frontier. But Grunig Middle School in Eagle River, a little over 20 students this is per teacher, classroom teacher. And then they also have a student administrative staff ratio, which I haven't really looked at very closely, but I'm going to look at it to see how many administrative people there are. Or students per staff member. I'm sorry, students per staff member. And right here in Anchorage, it looks like on the average, there are, let's scroll down, it's a long list. It's each individual school is listed, by the way, kind of interesting. 280 students per administrative staff member. Yeah, I don't know if that's high. I don't know if that's low. I'd have to compare it to the other five major school districts in Alaska. But I'm going to go through that list. It's very interesting.
We know that Sarah Montalbano, who was at the time working for the Alaska Policy Forum as their education analyst, she did the math on this and took a look at it and discovered that it used to be that it was closer to a 1-to-1 ratio of teachers in the classrooms to administrators. And then it crept up to being 2-to-1. And in some cases and in some districts, it's 3 and 4 administrators to 1 teacher in the classroom. And that was, that's again, I'm going back to my days at Lathrop High School, when there was 35 teachers or so, 35, 40 teachers, somewhere in that neighborhood. And I could count maybe 5 or 6 who were, administrative staff, nurses, principals, vice principals, office workers, you maybe you had 10 with janitors and everything else. And that seemed to make sense, 35, 40 teachers to 10 or a dozen, full-time staff and administrative staff. And now if you're getting to a 1-to-1 where it's now 30 and 30, or God forbid 2-to-1 or 3-to-1, that's where a lot of these, you've seen the costs, the inverse costs of the student, enrollment going down and the administrative costs going up. There's no mistake there. That's because there's more administrators than ever before.
Well, you mentioned your days at Lathrop High School. Here on the chart, it shows here 18 and a half students per teacher. in the high school. That's pretty good. I mean, I've never had a class in high school with that few students. And let's see, 213 students per administrator. Like I said, I don't know if that's, and the average in Fairbanks is 19 students per teacher in Fairbanks.
For the total, yeah. So we keep
average. Yeah.
We keep hearing about how this is going to be bad, though. There'll be 35 students in each classroom, and if we do this, it'll be, I mean, these are the words that we're hearing and the numbers we're hearing, and it seems like it's, again, more scare tactics than anything else. It's a way to manipulate the numbers to try and get parents to go advocate on their behalf, right? That's what it is. They're using them, again, as a stalking horse to go to the legislature and demand more money for their kids, even though the true numbers aren't, I mean, the numbers they're hearing are not really true.
Yeah, you're right, Michael. And they want to activate parents and staff members and to put the pressure on the legislature. And the legislature, they get a lot of pressure from the education industry. But I remember when I was in high school, I had over 37 kids in my high school math classes. And one of the keys is back then, guess what? We didn't misbehave. We were there to learn. I'm a beneficiary of the Sputnik generation. Man, we were really engaged back then in math and science. We were motivated because we knew our country, quote, was in danger back then. I don't think you have that today. Today, you have a lot of students, let's say a few students in a class that misbehave, detract from the educational process going on in the classroom, and deprive those other students in the classroom of their civil rights to get a good education. I would like to see an effective classroom teacher in every classroom that can motivate students. And until that happens, we're going to continue to have problems. And every teacher's the same, just like every student's the same, and that's the way the union operates. And that's very sad, but that's just the way it is. So you can look for another chapter next year from the Anchorage School District. It's going to be $74 million in the hole again. It's getting old. This is like a record.
Well, they've already said they're coming back next year. It's going to happen. What's going on. And
where are they going to get the money?
Well, that's the thing. I mean, that's the question I was just going to ask. I mean, nobody asked, how do we pay for it? How do we pay for what's going on?
Well, you remember they did a study 4 or 5 years ago about a state income tax at a very high level, and it brought in, I think, like $120 million was all. So you can have that. You can have a statewide sales tax. You can actually have a statewide property tax. But when you start doing that, people start leaving. And when education doesn't improve, that's the other problem. They'll say, well, you only gave us $600 or let's say $700 increase in the BSA this year. It takes a long time for that to go through the system and for kids to get really better. And
well, yeah, if they've been holding on to money for 2 years now for money that they got before, no wonder it takes so long. I mean, that's the thing. It'll take us a while. Of course, that's the new mantra that you've heard recently over the last few months is we're not failing, although they are failing. We're not failing. We're starving. It's because we didn't have enough money that we didn't do. That's the push there, is that if we just had more money, we could make it happen. But again, 2015, spending more than any other state in the nation on a per capita basis on education, we were still like 46th and 47th in the nation. This is not a money issue. We're down to the last 2 minutes here, David, so I want to give you final thoughts. Do you think the governor is going to veto this HB 57? And they've got the contingency in there where if he does veto it, they've still got another funding line for just a flat outside the formula fund. What do you think is going to happen?
I think the governor's going to veto HB 57. I hope he vetoes HB 57 because there are no policy reforms actually in the bill. Now, the education industry, I think Senator Tobin and maybe Senator Giesel, I get newsletters, said that there's actually policy in the bill. The funding is policy. Well, that's news to me. It's not going to improve education. what they're trying to do is inflation proof the employees of the school districts. Meanwhile, they're going to take the PFDs from the lower level income people, and they're going to put them into poverty. And then you're going to need more programs for them. Also, quote, welfare type programs for them to keep them alive and to sustain them. But until we have education savings accounts or something very similar to that, education in Alaska is not going to improve. Right now, there are other states working on improving their math programs, just like the Alaska Reads Act, modeled after Florida. Now many states are doing programs and policies to improve their math curricula as well.
Right.
And Alaska, it'll be 5 more years before they even consider that, because it's just too
well.
And the kids in Alaska are no different than the kids in Florida.
Right.
This is what's interesting.
We're seeing these states that are spending a lot less, doing a lot better. And it's because of how they're spending it and what they're focusing on. And policy does matter. David Boyle, senior contributor, Must Read Alaska. David, thanks for coming on board. Folks, we're out of time. Tomorrow, Brad Keithley, Chris Story. Be kind, love one another, live well. All right, David, final bite at the apple in case there's anything we missed. Final thoughts here before I let you go.
Well, it's unfortunate, but what I see happening is happening for decades now is the fact that the NEA basically is controlling everything that's going on in the legislature and in, for example, the Anchorage School District for sure. When you have the former teacher union president in Anchorage is being the former or just resigned from the president of the Anchorage School Board, you're not going to see any change except more funding, because they do know that the number of students in the future is decreasing substantially. And when you do that, you're going to lose union membership. So what I've just seen now is in Anchorage, they're going to pump up psychologists, counselors, librarians, assistant librarians, and nurses in the next year's budget, because they're also members of the teachers union. So they have to maintain their control and their numbers. And that's unfortunate because they're not focused on the students. And so let's just hope and pray for the best. And I don't know where the money's coming from. There's, particularly if the price of oil goes down to maybe $45 a barrel. And I guess Brad will have something to say about that tomorrow.
Yeah. Well, we're going to see what happens. I don't think next year is going to be easy for sure.
No.
If the oil prices do get down into the low 60s or mid 50s, it's just going to be even worse. And of course, they're coming back. We've already said they're coming back next year for more money. And again, are Alaskans ready to pay an education tax? Are they ready to do that? I mean, I'm not. I'm done with that at this point. We need to do better with what we have, and they just don't seem to understand that. All right, David Boyle, thank you, my friend.
Thank you, Michael. Education tax. Wow. I wonder how much it would be.
I don't know. How much would it have to be? Millions.
$1,000.
Yeah. Well, don't give him any ideas, David. All
you
right.
can just endorse your PFD.
Yeah, there you go. Just endorse it over. We'll have Randy sign his PFD over to the school districts.
Thanks, Michael.
Appreciate it. Yep.
Have a great day.
Tax me harder, Daddy. Yes, that's what they would do. Yeah, exactly. All right, back with more, folks. We will see you guys tomorrow. Be kind. Love one another. Live well. We'll see you then. Have a great day. Bye-bye.
We've shed our terrestrial radio skin, and now we are slimy lizard internet people. It's the Michael Duke Show.